dating James for 7 years. He always refused to marry me. I thought it was because he was financially strapped and didn't want to shortchange me. Until the Dragon Boat Festival, when I was on call for my first surgery. James signed the surgery consent form as the patient's son-in-law. I didn't cry or make a scene. After the surgery, I blocked all of James' contacts. He panicked and waited for me after work at the hospital. Miranda, it's a marriage of convenience. I'm only with her to get her money to buy a house and marry you. You're the one I've always loved. Chapter 1. I had been dating James for 7 years, and every time I brought up marriage, he would change the subject. I thought he felt financially strained and didn't want to put me through that, intending to save up more money before marrying me. To ease his burden, just before the Dragon Boat Festival, I secretly used my savings to buy a house, planning to surprise him on our anniversary, but I received an urgent call from the hospital to cover a shift. When I called James to explain, I couldn't tell if I was imagining things. Although he outwardly complained about me breaking our plans, his tone seemed like a sigh of relief. I didn't think much of it. After changing into my scrubs, I headed to the operating room to prepare. Doctor, the patient was in a car accident and has multiple fractures. All the other surgeons are fully booked. It's okay. I understand. Is the patient almost here? Yes. They just arrived and are being brought in. All right. I'll go meet with the family for consent forms. I walked into the pre-op consultation room and pressed the call button for the family. It wasn't long before the family member entered and sat down. I finished looking over the patient's file and finally looked up, only to find that the family member was James. You're the patient's family? Because I was wearing a hat and mask. James clearly didn't recognize me. Yes, I'm his son-in-law. Chapter 2. I thought I had misheard, so I asked again, but the answer was the same. My hand tightened around the consent form, and my heart felt heavy and suffocated. Doctor? Doctor? James' voice snapped me back to reality. I looked at the man in front of me, the one who should have been the most familiar but now felt like a complete stranger. Then, I glanced at the patient's file, taking a deep breath. The surgery risks are all listed here. Please review them. If everything is fine, sign the form so I can proceed with the surgery. James took the form and carefully reviewed it. I stared at him, watching him sign, and then his face changed as he read through the document. Surgeon Miranda? You're Miranda? He jerked his head up, looking at me in disbelief. I snatched the consent form from his hand, my voice icy, completely unlike my usual tone. Yes, please wait outside. After the surgery, we'll take the patient directly back to the room. I turned and walked away, with James shouting for me to listen to his explanation. But I had no intention of stopping, suppressing the disappointment, sadness, and disbelief in my heart. I calmly completed the surgery and helped the nurses wheel the patient back to the room. Although I didn't want to see James again, I had to inform the family about the post-op precautions. Fortunately, James wasn't there this time. I met the patient's daughter instead, James' nominal wife. Chapter 3. The woman was very beautiful, completely different from my style. She had the kind of bold, flamboyant personality that was immediately apparent. So, was this the reason James never wanted to marry me? Thinking about our 7-year relationship, my heart ached as if someone was squeezing it. I forced myself to push through the discomfort, giving her the post-op instructions at a rapid pace. Keep your head turned. Don't use a pillow for 6 hours to prevent choking if there's vomiting. Call me if anything happens. Before she could respond, I rushed out of the room. I wanted to escape from anything and anyone that reminded me of James. I took half a day off from the hospital and returned to the apartment James and I used to live in together. The walls were still covered with pictures of us. The bathroom, the bedroom, everywhere carried the traces of our life together. My eyes stung, but no tears came. 7 years of love ended in that moment. The moment I learned James had secretly married someone else. We had broken up and gotten back together many times, but none had left me as disappointed as this. James, we're finished. For good. Chapter 4. The apartment was rented by James. I packed my things quickly and sent James a message. I told him I didn't want anything else and that he could do whatever he wanted with the rest. Then, I blocked all his contacts and left with my luggage, heading to the new house I had bought. Work at the hospital kept me so busy that I didn't have time to process my feelings about the breakup. I could only act as if nothing had happened and continue working. James' father-in-law seemed to be recovering well after the surgery, thanks to his good health. To avoid further contact with James, I wanted to transfer the case to another doctor. But when the other doctors heard the patient's name, they all shook their heads and refused. Miranda, it's not that we don't want to help you, but this family is just too troublesome. We don't want to get involved. Seeing their reactions, I couldn't force them, so I had no choice but to keep handling it myself. It didn't take long for me to understand what they meant by troublesome. James' wife, Alice, barged straight into the doctor's office, yanking me up from my seat. You quack! My father's face is turning purple. Did you mess up the surgery? Purple face? Hearing this, I didn't bother addressing her rude attitude. I broke free from her grip and immediately rushed to the room with the nurse. The scene I walked into made my blood rush to my head. I was so angry. My head pounded. After resolving the situation, I barely had time to catch my breath before Alice stormed back in front of me. What did you do to my father again? I'm telling you, if anything happens to him, I'll make sure. Before she could finish her sentence, my frustration boiled over, and I slapped her across the face. Did I or did I not tell you no pillows? Did I or did I not say to keep his head turned? He nearly choked to death on his own vomit. If something had happened, would it be your fault or mine? I've dealt with disobedient family members before, but never anyone this reckless. And to top it off, this woman was my boyfriend's wife. With that in mind, it was impossible for me to stay calm. Alice was just about to retort when James pushed through the crowd and rushed in. The previously domineering woman instantly transformed into a helpless damsel in distress. She threw herself into James' arms, crying, "Honey, this quack doctor hit me." 7 years, except for the very beginning of our relationship. James never comforted me when I cried. But now, here he was, frantically wiping away Alice's tears. Caring or not, it's not something you can fake. I laughed bitterly, not wanting to get entangled with these people any longer, and turned to leave. Miranda, wait! A familiar voice stopped me in my tracks. I turned around. I know you have issues with me, but Alice is innocent. You shouldn't have hit her. Excuse me? Miranda, we've broken up. Alice is my wife now. I hope, as a doctor, you can maintain professionalism and not bring your personal emotions into your work. The crowd murmured around us, and my fellow doctors and nurses shot me strange looks. I was both furious and stunned. I couldn't believe the same James who had tried to explain himself before the surgery was now saying these things in front of Alice. I wanted to argue, but no matter what I said, it would make me look bad. As I was thinking about how to respond, someone came up behind me and placed an arm around my shoulders. Instinctively, I wanted to pull away, but the man whispered in my ear, "I've got you." I immediately let down my guard and allowed him to proceed. Chapter 5. James saw the man holding me so intimately. His expression shifted, and he was the first to speak. "Who are you?" "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Luis, Miranda's fiancé." Luis was half a head taller than James, dressed in a black suit, with a sharp nose and handsome features. His looks far surpassed James, with Luis showing up and claiming to be my fiancé. Naturally, no one would believe I'd still be involved with James. The rumors collapsed on their own, though Alice and James tried to keep arguing. But when the old man woke up, they were too busy taking care of him to deal with anything else. I took the opportunity to leave. Once we reached a quiet corner, I shook off Luis' arm. "Thanks for that." After expressing my gratitude, I was about to walk away, but Luis grabbed my arm. "That's a pretty half-hearted thank you, don't you think? So, what do you want?" "Take me out for dinner tonight." After a moment's thought, I couldn't find a reason to refuse, so I nodded. We exchanged contact information, and I returned to the office, only to receive a notice from the hospital asking me to take a temporary leave. "Miranda, we know it wasn't your fault, but you did hit a patient's family member, and the impact isn't good. Take a few days off, and your salary will remain unchanged." All right. Honestly, I'd been overwhelmed with surgeries this year, with all my holidays taken up. This break was exactly what I needed. I went home, changed into a floral dress, and applied light makeup. Just as I finished getting ready, I got a call from Luis. "Hey, I'm downstairs. No rush. Take your time." His voice was soft, as if he were speaking to someone he liked. I shook my head to myself, thinking, here's another playboy, best to avoid getting involved. Luis took me to a newly opened, trendy restaurant. It was crowded, so we chose a private room in the back. Before sitting down, Luis used a wet wipe to clean my chair and the table. He then asked the waiter for hot water and skillfully sterilized the bowls and chopsticks for me. For someone who looked like a spoiled rich kid, he did all these things without seeming out of place. You've probably had more than a few girlfriends, right? I couldn't help but comment. Being his girlfriend, even if he wasn't fully invested, would at least make someone feel comfortable with all this attention to detail. Unlike me, after 7 years of dating, except for the first year when James was pursuing me and the first 6 months we were together, I never experienced being cared for like this again. It was always me taking care of James. I even turned down a job at a hospital in my hometown, moved over 1,000 kilometers to a city where I knew no one, and worked hard to build a life here. Once we moved in together, I did everything, no matter how busy work was. I'd always make James something special to eat when I got home, and in the end, what I got in return was finding out he had secretly married someone else. It's only now that I realize, if love isn't reciprocated, it should end early. That way, you won't hurt yourself in the long run. The dishes were served, and Luis, while placing a piece of meat into my bowl, glanced up at me. "You're mistaken, sis. I've never had a girlfriend." Chapter 6. I froze for a moment, confused by how someone who had never been in a relationship could be so attentive and caring. Noticing my confusion, Luis chuckled softly. "They show it all the time on TV. Sis, anyone with a bit of intention can learn." There was a hint in his words, as if he were mocking me for not seeing that James had been half-hearted all along. I buried my head and took a few bites of food. "I learned all this just for you, sis." "Huh? What did you say?" I was so shocked by Luis' words that I didn't swallow my food properly and started choking. He quickly stood up, handed me water, and gently patted my back. "Take it slow, sis. Even though I ordered all your favorites, you don't have to eat so fast." Hearing what he said, I finally took a closer look at the dishes on the table. They really were all my favorites. But Luis hadn't let me order. How did he know what I liked? You. We both started speaking at the same time. I smiled and gestured for Luis to go first. "Have you really forgotten about me, sis?" Chapter 7. His eyes looked hurt, and a wave of guilt washed over me. I searched my memory, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't recall ever meeting him. "Luis, maybe you've got the wrong person?" As soon as I said it, a flash of sadness crossed Luis' face before he returned to his usual demeanor. With the way I looked back then, it's no surprise you don't remember me. Even though he said it didn't bother him, Luis was clearly down for the rest of the meal. I felt a bit guilty, too. After dinner, Luis offered to drive me home. When we arrived, I unbuckled my seatbelt, ready to thank him and get out of the car. But he suddenly leaned in. His face was so close, barely an inch away. I could feel his hot breath. "Aren't you going to invite me up, sis?" I should have refused, but looking at his face, and the nervousness in his eyes, I couldn't get the words out. If James could easily betray our 7-year relationship, why couldn't I let loose and start fresh? Besides, this man in front of me, apart from being a bit younger, was good-looking, gentle, and better than James in every way. With that thought, I leaned forward, my lips brushing lightly against his cheek. "Are you sure you want to come up? I won't be responsible for whatever happens with you thinking that way, sis." I couldn't be happier. With that, Luis kissed me. His clumsy kissing technique confirmed what he had said earlier. He really hadn't been in a relationship before. Chapter 8. As soon as I opened the door, Luis kissed me with urgency. We hadn't even caught our breath from climbing the stairs when his dominant and forceful kiss left me almost breathless. After a long while, Luis finally pulled back, his eyes filled with conflicting emotions. Sis, if you regret this now, it's still not too late. Shouldn't I be asking you that? Little brother, if you regret this, I'll let you go. Otherwise, before I could finish, Luis silenced me with another passionate kiss. There was no turning back now. Afterward, Luis leaned down to kiss my lips and wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes. Don't cry, sis. I'll take good care of you. Chapter 9. Our first night was long. The physical and emotional pain, along with exhaustion, made me fall into a deep sleep. When I woke up, the bed was already cold. Luis' warmth had long since disappeared. I felt a slight pang in my heart, but I reminded myself that I had wanted to let loose for once and had already said I wouldn't take responsibility for anything. It was normal for Luis to leave. As I dragged my sore body out of bed and started to throw the sheets into the washing machine, a pair of hands interrupted me. Luis, you didn't leave? Of course, I didn't. We've already slept together. Sis, now you have to take responsibility for me. Sunlight streamed into the room, making Luis' side profile seem to glow. I stared at him, unable to snap out of it for a long time. Maybe this is what my girlfriends were always talking about, the irresistible puppy-like younger guys. Despite having said I wouldn't be responsible for anything, I found myself nodding without thinking. But after breakfast, when Luis carried me back to bed and his hands began to roam over my body again, I regretted it. It's still early. Sis, let's go one more time. No. I refused firmly, but it seemed like Luis didn't hear me and continued his actions. My resistance was futile. After another round of intimacy, I lay powerless in Luis' arms. He gently stroked my hair and kissed the spot behind my ear. Sis, you're finally mine. His words were filled with the joy of finally getting something he had long desired, and a deep sense of guilt rose in my heart. Luis must have mistaken me for someone else. I'm sorry, Luis. I dragged you into this just because of a fleeting impulse. Why are you apologizing, sis? Luis' eyes were filled with concern as he kissed away the tears from the corners of my eyes. This was mutual. There's no need for you to apologize, but I'm not the person in your heart. For some reason, tears kept falling from my eyes. Luis quickly sat up and gently wiped away my tears. Once my emotions calmed down, he spoke with a serious expression. Miranda, it's you. It's always been you. Chapter 10. My relationship with Luis continued from there. To me, it was just an arrangement between two adults, each getting what they needed. But Luis clearly didn't see it that way. Seeing how seriously he treated our relationship, I couldn't bring myself to crush his hopes, so I just let things be. After a week off, I received a call from the hospital asking me to return to work. Luis drove me there. As soon as I got out of the car, I saw James standing at the entrance of the clinic, holding a large pile of luggage. The moment he saw me, he set down his things and quickly walked toward me. But I had no intention of acknowledging him. As soon as he reached me, I didn't even spare him a glance, walking right past him. Miranda, stop. As James spoke, he jogged a few steps to grab my arm. I impatiently shook him off. What do you want? Miranda, it's been a week. Haven't you had enough? It's time to stop this nonsense. Nonsense? I couldn't help but laugh in anger. We've been together for 7 years, and you went behind my back to marry someone else. And you think I'm the one making a fuss? James' face froze for a moment. Then he put on a pitiful expression. Miranda, after all these years together, I thought you understood me. Understand you? James, how did I never realize before how shameless you are? When we were together, I thought he was fine, apart from not being considerate enough. Now that I've let go, I can see how truly awful he is. James was still holding onto my hand, about to say something when he glanced past me, immediately releasing my hand and hurrying forward. Alice, finally. You're here. Let's go home now. The same man who was just asking me to understand him was now walking past me with his arm around another woman, not even sparing me a glance. Watching the scene unfold, I couldn't help but feel like my 7 years of devotion had been fed to the dogs. Hey, isn't that the doctor who operated on my dad? Alice stopped in her tracks. Looking at me, I stared right back at her, curious to see what she was planning this time. Although we were at the hospital entrance, and I needed to be mindful of the situation, I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. To my surprise, Alice's attitude was completely different this time. "I'm sorry, doctor. I was overly emotional before. Where's your fiancé? Why isn't he with you this time?" Before I could even be surprised at her sudden change in attitude, her next sentence revealed her true intentions. Looking at James standing next to her, seething but too afraid to speak, I couldn't help but laugh. "He just left. I can introduce you to sometime if you'd like," I said politely, then added with a sharp tone. "But Alice, constantly eyeing other people's boyfriends isn't exactly a good habit." The looks on their faces, as if they'd just eaten something foul, gave me immense satisfaction. I swung my bag over my shoulder and walked into the hospital, ignoring Alice's shrill screams from behind. Chapter 11. On my first day back at work, things weren't too busy. Just after lunch, Luis called me. "Sis, why don't you ditch work? I want to take you somewhere nice tonight." "Tonight? It's still early. Why the rush?" I was confused. "Come on, start getting ready. I'm downstairs." By the way, I shook my head with a smile and, after telling my colleague, I changed and left. Luis took me to a mall. He led me straight to the top floor, where the dress boutique was, and picked out several gowns for me to try on. "Sis, these are similar to your usual style. Go ahead and try them." I was about to refuse, but seeing the hopeful look in his eyes, I couldn't say no. I remembered what my friend once said, it's impossible to resist a puppy-like guy's requests. Yep, she was right. In the end, under Louis' strong encouragement, I chose a black gown with a long train. I paired it with bold red lipstick to match. Looking at the person in the mirror, I could hardly believe it was me. Before, I was always too busy with work to pay attention to my appearance. At most applying light makeup. Whenever I saved a bit of money, I couldn't bear to spend it on expensive clothes. Always focused on buying a home and marrying James as soon as possible. If it weren't for being with Luis, if it weren't for him bringing me here, I couldn't imagine that I could ever look this beautiful. Luis dismissed the makeup artist and hugged me from behind. "Sis, looking like this, I almost don't want to take you out anymore." The desire in his voice was so raw. His lips moved from my ear toward my mouth, and I hurriedly turned away. "No, you'll ruin my makeup." He paused for a moment, but his breathing only grew heavier. A bad feeling rose in my chest. "There's still time before tonight. Sis, how about we?" He lightly grazed my earlobe with his teeth. A shiver ran through me, and my voice weakened. "No, there are too many people here. I've already sent them home, and the store's closed." "Sis, don't worry." Before I could argue further, Luis silenced me with a kiss. His heated, intense kiss left me limp on the sofa, unable to resist his actions. As he moved, he whispered in my ear, "Sis, I love you. Never leave me." I drifted into sleep again, exhausted and overwhelmed by pleasure. When I woke up, I felt someone drawing on my face. Startled, I opened my eyes to see Luis's face, close and magnified before me. "Don't worry, sis. It's me. We'll fix your makeup and then leave." The mess had been cleaned up, and my makeup was as fresh as before the workout. The only difference was the dress I was wearing. Noticing my confusion, Luis spoke up. "Don't worry, sis. I did all the cleaning myself. No one else came in. The dress was torn, so I got you a new one." Seeing the pile of torn dresses in the corner, I murmured with a bit of sadness, "What a waste. They were so expensive." "It's not expensive. It doesn't compare to you. Not even a fraction," Luis said, pausing his actions to kneel and help me into a pair of prepared high heels. After so many years with James, I had never been treated with such care and tenderness. "Luis, why are you so good to me?" Luis sat down beside me and held me close. "Because you're worth it, Miranda." Hearing my name for the first time from him confirmed that I wasn't anyone's substitute. What Luis cared about and cherished was truly me. Chapter 12. That night, Luis took me to a friend's birthday party. We arrived fashionably late, and as soon as we walked in, all eyes were on us. "Wow, you actually brought a date. That's something new." The guest of honor greeted us, hugging Luis and then nodding at me. Yes, my fiancé, Miranda. Hearing Luis's introduction surprised me for a moment, but I didn't speak up to contradict him. His friend said, "Hello, I'm Leo." After nodding in greeting, I followed Luis as he greeted the rest of his friends before sitting down in a corner. I rarely wear high heels, and after just a short while, my ankles were already aching. Luis noticed and knelt down to massage my feet. My face turned bright red, and I felt the curious gazes of the people around us. I couldn't bring myself to lift my head. I whispered to Luis, okay, get up." He saw my expression and chuckled softly, then stood up and gave me a quick, affectionate kiss on the lips. Trying to compose myself, I kept my head down and distracted myself by scrolling through my phone, finally able to ignore the stares. Soon after, a loud commotion erupted around us. I followed everyone's gaze. James and Alice. What were they doing here? James had fallen to the ground, and Alice was sitting beside him, crying. I glanced at Luis, and he understood. After asking around, he returned to me. That guy fell off the platform. Luis didn't even use James's name, calling him that guy, his jealous expression making me laugh. "You're not worried about him, are you, sis?" "Of course not, Luis. I'm the type to hold grudges." Hearing that, Luis let out a sigh of relief, put my hand on his arm, and led me over. Leo came up to us and explained, "Looks like he's hurt pretty badly. I've already called an ambulance. TCH. What a way to ruin a birthday." Leo sounded irritated, and Luis patted his back, offering a few comforting words. Alice heard Luis's voice and immediately looked up at him. "Can you help me?" Her pitiful appearance could have moved anyone, if I didn't already know her true nature. Seeing that Luis ignored her, Alice walked up to him and grabbed his sleeve. Luis's expression darkened instantly. "Let go!" He roughly shook Alice off, then, with disgust, took off his jacket and threw it on the ground. I glanced at Luis, then at James lying on the ground, and couldn't help but feel a wave of emotions. Luis kept his distance from other women to avoid making me jealous. And James, the man I had loved for 7 years, had married someone else behind my back. The choice between them had become obvious long ago. With that thought, I walked toward James. Chapter 13. "Sis." Luis's voice sounded anxious. I smiled at him. "Luis, I'm a doctor." He understood, and the unease on his face faded, replaced by his usual gentle expression. I crouched beside James and examined his unnaturally bent arm. It wasn't broken, probably just dislocated. After checking a few times, I grabbed his arm and with a quick motion, snapped it back into place. James screamed, then moved his arm in disbelief. "I'm better, Miranda. Thank you. I knew you were the best." James tried to hug me, completely ignoring the fact that his wife was still there. Unlike that vicious woman, when I was about to fall, she used me as a cushion. Luis stepped in front of me, stopping James in his tracks, and at that moment, I realized what had just happened. Seeing James's eyes filled with love and gratitude, as if we were still together, I stepped out from behind Luis. "James, you've misunderstood. I helped you only because I'm a doctor." Leo's birthday party lasted until past 10 at night, and I was feeling tired. So Luis and I left early. Meanwhile, James and Alice kept arguing, ruining Leo's mood, and eventually, they were kicked out. Luis's friends mentioned that the two even got into a physical fight, shouting that they would get divorced the next day. I just smiled and didn't say anything. Whatever happened to them no longer had anything to do with me. Chapter 14. After a month of being with Luis, on a weekend off, Luis took me to the beach. He rented an entire island to propose to me. There were fireworks that lasted half the night. In front of family and friends, I put on the ring and embraced my future. He was as happy as a child. The next day, we went to the civil affairs office and got our marriage certificate. It wasn't until I saw his household registration that I finally understood the origin of his feelings for me. Luis used to go by the name Lucas. No wonder I had a sense of familiarity the first time we met. No wonder I felt a similar familiarity when I met his parents. It turns out we had met 5 years ago. Chapter 15. The first surgery I ever performed, my very first patient, was Lucas. At the time, Luis had been in a car accident, and his entire face was wrapped in bandages. The surgery I performed was for his leg fracture. After the surgery, there was a time when he couldn't stand due to the trauma. I stayed by his side the whole time, helping him with his rehabilitation and encouraging him. He witnessed the beginning of my career as a doctor, and I gave him the courage to step out of the shadows. It turns out we crossed paths long before I realized. Looking at the man beside me now, I could still see traces of that college student from back then. So, how did your dad come up with the name Lucas? I teased, but he didn't mind at all, affectionately ruffling my hair. He liked the name, so that's what he called me. But after the car accident, he said it wasn't lucky, so he changed it to Luis. Strangely enough, before the name change, I always seemed to have small accidents, but after changing my name, nothing ever happened again. My dad says it's because of the name change, but I think it's because I met you. Sis, you gave me a new life. No, Luis, you gave me a new future. You made me believe that I also deserve to be loved so deeply. Chapter 16. In the apartment Miranda once shared with James, James was collapsed by the bedside, empty bottles scattered all over the floor. He was drunk, muttering continuously, "Miranda, Miranda." The reason he married Alice at the time was because Alice had promised that they could get divorced after 6 months and that she would give him 1 million as compensation for those 6 months. Back then, he still had feelings for Miranda, but the thought of the 1 million made him decide to marry Alice in secret. After marrying Alice, her beauty, her willingness to dress up, and the occasional display of vulnerability attracted him. It was completely different from Miranda, who always dressed plainly and hardly ever wore makeup. Without realizing it, he was drawn to Alice and started to like her, but he couldn't let go of the 7 years he had with Miranda. He thought he could have both, 2 women, as long as he wasn't caught. It wasn't until his father-in-law's surgery that he saw the name of the attending physician. At that moment, his first thought was to try and win Miranda back. But when a conflict arose between Miranda and Alice, after weighing his options, he still chose to protect Alice first. When faced with 7 years of love versus money, it only took him a moment to choose money. Later, after seeing Alice constantly throwing herself at other men, he realized that she had never been sincere about marrying him. She used him to solve the problem of her father pressuring her to get married, and then immediately wanted to discard him. She even used him as a cushion when she fell. James finally woke up. He divorced Alice. Although he didn't get the money, he still had Miranda. But half a month passed, and his messages went unanswered. His calls never connected. "Miranda, do you really not want me anymore?" James murmured, tears streaming down his face. "No, Miranda and I have years of history. She's just waiting for me to apologize. As long as I admit my mistakes, she'll come back." Chapter 17. After Luis and I got our marriage certificate, we were about to go out and celebrate when I received a call from the hospital. They needed me for surgery. I looked apologetically at Luis, but he didn't mind at all. "Sis, I love you and I love your profession too, so there's no need to feel guilty." He drove me back to the hospital and waited for me in the car. He only came to pick me up after the surgery was done. My colleagues teased me when they saw him. "Miranda, you've really made a good choice this time. He's much better than the last one." "Of course," I laughed, holding Luis's hand as we left together. As we walked into the hospital lobby, a figure suddenly appeared, blocking my way. James, dressed in a black suit, his hair clearly styled with care, but the dark circles under his eyes and the redness in them were impossible to hide. He held a bouquet of roses and immediately knelt down on one knee in front of me. "Miranda, I was only with Alice to get her money to buy a house for us. I know I was wrong now. Will you forgive me?" Before I could speak, a hand took the flowers and threw them into the trash can nearby. "Who do you think you are, throwing away my flowers?" James panicked and stood up, shouting at Luis. Luis smirked. "It's only been a few days, James, and you don't recognize me? You're Luis?" "Yeah," Luis replied, raising our clasped hands, the wedding rings on our fingers unmistakable. James looked at me in disbelief. seeking confirmation. Miranda, you? Could you please move? Don't interrupt my date with my husband. Thank you. I watched as James's face fell, tears streaming down his cheeks. But all I felt was a brief moment of sadness for the 7 years we had shared. There was no other emotion. I was now Luis's wife, and I had completely let go of that past. Chapter 18. 3 years after the wedding, Luis and I had a daughter. She looked exactly like me when I was a child. My parents and Luis's parents were overjoyed, spending all their time playing with our daughter. Back when I was with James, I never even dreamed that I could have a life like this. I didn't have to move far away, and my parents were still close by. Luis made all of this possible. Our daughter has a lively personality, completely different from how I was as a child. Luis spends all day with her, fulfilling her every wish, spoiling her endlessly. But whenever she asks if he loves mommy or her more, Luis always firmly replies, "Of course. I love your mommy more. No one is more important than her." I can't help but laugh when I see our daughter pout in jealousy, standing off to the side. I'm so grateful I studied medicine, and even more grateful that I met Luis. Without him, I would never have this peaceful, happy life. The summer our daughter turned 4, she went missing for half a day. Luis practically searched the entire city. It wasn't until the evening that she came back, holding a strawberry bear and bouncing around. "Mommy, a man took me to the amusement park all afternoon. He bought me lots of delicious food and fun toys." Luis and I exchanged a puzzled look, and our daughter continued, "That man knows you, Mommy. He said he was sorry and that he lost you." "Daddy, what did the man mean?" Our daughter looked up at Luis and asked. Luis scooped her up and pulled me close to him. "It doesn't mean anything, sweetie. All you need to know is that we're a happy family together." "Okay."